Are you ready to find out which 1960s sci-fi films actually rewrote the rules of cinema? This isn't your granddad's walk down memory lane. We're talking about movies that exploded old formulas, changed how we dream about the future, and shocked audiences in ways Hollywood had never dared. Which film made directors rethink reality? Which one made viewers wonder if the end was already here? And which one still holds up as a cinematic mind bomb decades later? Keep watching. Some of these films didn't just predict the future, they invented it. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. Let's kick this off with a movie that didn't just change sci-fi, it detonated it. Stanley Kubrick's 2001. A Space Odyssey is the kind of film that made Hollywood execs and future filmmakers look at their spaceship models and say, well, we're never going to top that. When this film dropped in 1968, it turned every cliché about bug-eyed monsters and cardboard rockets into stardust. Kubrick partnered with author Arthur C. Clarke to create a trip that was equal parts brain-melting spectacle and philosophical acid test. The opening, apes are discovering weapons, while Strauss's Also Sprach Zarathustra blasts over the soundtrack. The middle, astronauts face down an eerily calm supercomputer named HAL 9000. And that ending, viewers stumbled out of theaters convinced they'd just been to Jupiter and back. Kubrick's obsession with realism meant everything from zero-gravity toilets to spinning space stations felt legit. He even recruited NASA scientists for authenticity, refusing to let a single detail slide. Early audiences didn't know what to make of it. Some walked out, others came back stoned for round two just to try to get it. But the legacy, every major sci-fi movie since has lived in its shadow, from Star Wars to Interstellar. 2001 is more than a film. It's the Rosetta Stone of science fiction cinema, and even now, it still dares you to imagine what comes next. Planet of the Apes, 1968. What if humanity wasn't the top of the food chain? In 1968, Planet of the Apes dropped a cinematic banana peel under the feet of American moviegoers and sent them sliding into a world run by talking, horseback-riding apes. Charlton Heston stars as an astronaut who crash lands on a strange planet, only to be caged, hunted, and bossed around by a civilization of gorillas, orangutans, and chimpanzees. The real genius? Beneath the wild premise, the film is a biting satire of everything from racial tensions to nuclear war, all while making you question who the real animals are. Legendary makeup artist John Chambers redefined what prosthetics could do, winning an honorary Oscar for turning actors into believable simians. And then there's that ending, the Statue of Liberty, half buried in the sand, staring down Heston as he delivers one of the greatest, most gut-punching lines in movie history. Not only did Planet of the Apes launch 4 sequels, a TV show, and a multi-billion-dollar reboot, it proved sci-fi could be deadly serious, weirdly hilarious, and smarter than anyone expected. This film didn't just bend the genre, it turned it upside down and let the chimps run the show. Fantastic Voyage, 1966. Ever wished you could shrink down and see the world from the inside out? Fantastic Voyage takes that wish and cranks it up to full-throttle spectacle. The story: a group of scientists are shrunk to the size of a blood cell and injected into a dying diplomat's body, piloting a microscopic submarine through veins, arteries, and synapses while racing the clock. The effects? Mind-blowing for the era. Giant pumping hearts, swirling red blood cells, and trippy electrified brain matter. Director Richard Fleischer threw every Hollywood trick in the book at the screen, winning 2 Oscars for his troubles. Medical experts were called in to keep things plausible, and even Isaac Asimov was hired to write the novelization. His version actually came out before the movie and fixed a bunch of the science. The sets were so huge and detailed they pumped thousands of gallons of tinted liquid through transparent tubes to simulate the circulatory system. Fantastic Voyage wasn't just a thrill ride, it was a visual feast that made viewers believe in the impossible. This film set the standard for inner space adventures and proved that, in the right hands, sci-fi could make the human body as alien as the farthest galaxy. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. This isn't just a disaster movie, it's an apocalyptic fever dream from the heart of Cold War Britain. The Day the Earth Caught Fire tells the story of what happens when simultaneous nuclear tests knock the planet off its axis, sending Earth spiraling toward the sun. Forget superheroes and last-minute saves. This film drops you into the newsroom of the Daily Express, where real journalists sweat it out as the Thames dries up, cities collapse, and the world quite literally burns. Director Val Guest shot in actual Fleet Street offices, recruited real newspaper printers as extras, and spray-painted London landmarks to look scorched. There are no ray guns or aliens, just humans scrambling to survive their own mistakes. The film ends with a gut-twisting fake-out. 2 newspaper headlines are printed, world saved and world doomed, but the audience never finds out which one runs. That ambiguity left people reeling, convinced they'd seen different endings depending on their mood. The British Film Institute calls it one of the most important sci-fi movies ever made. The Day the Earth Caught Fire didn't just warn us about nuclear annihilation, it made the apocalypse feel like it could be reported in tomorrow's paper. Seconds 1966. Want to know what it feels like to lose your entire identity and still not escape yourself? Enter Seconds, the most disturbing identity crisis ever committed to film. Directed by John Frankenheimer, this mind-bender stars Rock Hudson as a middle-aged banker so desperate for a fresh start, he pays a shadowy company to fake his death, give him a new face, and reinvent his entire life. But instead of freedom, he finds paranoia, alienation, and a new kind of prison. Frankenheimer pulls out every trick: fisheye lenses, dizzying camera angles, and even hidden cameras at a real beach party where nobody knew they were being filmed. The studio hated it, the Cannes crowd booed it, and Hudson himself called it the hardest role of his career. For years, Seconds was nearly forgotten, until a new generation of filmmakers started name-dropping it as a secret influence, from Face Off to Get Out. The film's haunting style and raw psychological terror rewrote the rules for what sci-fi could be, not just spaceships and gadgets, but the nightmare lurking in your own reflection. Robinson Crusoe on Mars 1964. Who says survival stories need pirates or tropical islands? Robinson Crusoe on Mars traded cutlasses for spacesuits and gave the classic tale a fresh, cosmic spin. Picture this. Astronaut Kit Draper crash lands on the red planet with nothing but a monkey, dwindling supplies, and a landscape straight out of your wildest sci-fi dreams. Filmed in Death Valley's blistering heat, director Byron Haskin pushed for maximum realism, even consulting with NASA before humanity had ever set foot on Mars. The barren vistas, tinted orange and crimson, made Earth look like an alien world long before the first actual Mars photographs wowed the public. Draper isn't just fighting thirst and hunger. He's forced to become a one-man Mars mission, figuring out how to extract oxygen from rocks and water from mysterious sources. The monkey, Mona, isn't just comic relief. She's his emotional lifeline, adding a weirdly touching dynamic to the loneliness of space. This film was all about human ingenuity and resilience, wrapped in practical effects and suspense that still hold up. Critics didn't get it at the time, but the movie found a cult following among scientists and space nerds, even showing up in NASA training sessions as a what-if scenario. Robinson Crusoe on Mars didn't just imagine Mars as a deadly desert, it made the idea of surviving there feel possible. In a world obsessed with space race headlines, this was the movie that made Mars less of a fantasy and more of a challenge, just waiting for the right explorer. Quatermass in the Pit, 1967. Think British sci-fi is all tea and stiff upper lips, not in Quatermass in the Pit. This Hammer Films classic yanked the genre into the deep end with a mashup of alien horror, evolutionary theory, and full-blown supernatural chaos. When construction workers dig up a mysterious spacecraft buried beneath London, it sets off a psychic chain reaction. Turns out those Martians inside didn't just crash here, they rewired humanity itself, planting secrets in our DNA. Suddenly, Londoners are gripped by mass hysteria, and strange powers start bubbling up everywhere. Director Roy Ward Baker and screenwriter Nigel Neal weren't afraid to throw everything at the screen. Apocalyptic visions, ancient astronaut theories, and effects that, for their budget, still hold their own. Double exposures, practical models, and translucent Martian apparitions make the climax unforgettable. The film's blend of science, fear, and urban legend inspired a wave of imitators. John Carpenter later called it a direct inspiration for Prince of Darkness, and traces of its ancient aliens plot are everywhere, from Indiana Jones to modern TV thrillers. Initially dismissed as too scary for audiences, Quatermass in the Pit is now celebrated as the British sci-fi horror that made you believe monsters might be lurking right under your city streets. The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, 1963. Leave it to Roger Corman, the king of low-budget weirdness, to take a simple sci-fi premise and push it into pure nightmare fuel. X. The Man with the X-ray Eyes follows Dr. James Xavier, a brilliant scientist whose experimental eye drops grant him the power to see through, well, just about everything. At first, it's a miracle. He saves lives, diagnoses illnesses, and becomes the toast of the medical world. But as his vision intensifies, he starts seeing things no one was meant to witness: bones, organs, the very fabric of reality peeling away. Ray Milland dives into the role, making Xavier's descent into madness both tragic and totally believable. Corman's inventive use of kaleidoscopic lenses and hand-painted effects gives the film a psychedelic, almost dizzying look. The climax, Xavier, driven to the brink by sights too disturbing to describe, confronts the limits of human knowledge in a scene so intense, urban legends sprang up about alternate endings that were supposedly too controversial for release. Despite being made on a shoestring budget, X became a cult sensation, inspiring future sci-fi thrillers to push the boundaries of what's possible and what's just too much for the mind to handle. This is the movie that proved science fiction could be terrifying, philosophical, and just plain wild all at the same time. The Time Machine, 1960. Traveling through time was nothing new for fiction, but The Time Machine gave it a pulse, a conscience, and a hefty dose of style. Adapted from H.G. Wells's visionary novel, George Pal's film stars Rod Taylor as the ultimate Victorian inventor. With his steampunk-inspired contraption, he whizzes through the centuries, watching society collapse, rise, and mutate. It's not just a trip through future tech. He lands among the peaceful Eloi and the savage Morlocks, two races representing the extremes of humanity's evolution. The effects? Mind-blowing for 1960. Stop motion, elaborate sets, and spinning clocks brought time travel to life like never before. The movie scooped up an Oscar for special effects, inspiring a generation of filmmakers to aim higher. But The Time Machine did more than dazzle audiences. It asked real questions. Can technology save us, or will it tear us apart? What happens when the future isn't a utopia, but a warning? This film was the spark that lit the fuse for decades of time travel cinema. If you've ever cheered for Marty McFly or wondered what's next in Doctor Who, tip your hat to the original ride through the ages. Barbarella, 1968. Let's get one thing straight. Barbarella isn't just a movie. It's a psychedelic roller coaster where every frame feels like a pop art explosion. Jane Fonda stars as the intergalactic agent Barbarella, tasked with saving the universe in a future where peace and pleasure are the law of the land. The film is a visual feast, glittering sets, wild costumes designed by Paco Rabanne, and props that look like they crashed in from another dimension. Director Roger Vadim went all in on style, spending a fortune on costumes and production design, creating worlds that would influence everything from The Fifth Element to Lady Gaga music videos. But here's the twist. Beneath the camp and color, Barbarella was ahead of its time. It flipped the script on who gets to save the day, putting a fearless, curious woman at the center of the cosmic action. Critics didn't get it at first. Some dismissed it as too far out. Others just didn't know what to make of the excess. But over the years, Barbarella turned into a cult phenomenon, inspiring designers, musicians, and filmmakers. If you like your sci-fi bold, bizarre, and totally unforgettable, this is the film that dared to blast off in a direction nobody else saw coming. Village of the Damned, 1960. Sometimes, the scariest invasion isn't from Mars or another galaxy, it's from right down the street. Village of the Damned proved that in 1960, with an opening that's pure nightmare fuel, every person in the sleepy English town of Midwich suddenly falls unconscious, only to wake and find every woman mysteriously pregnant. 9 months later, a new generation of children is born, all with platinum hair, piercing eyes, and chilling, synchronized stares. Forget your typical alien overlords. These kids don't need spaceships or laser guns. Their weapon is pure, unblinking intelligence. The real terror in Village of the Damned is psychological. The children are cold, calculating, and terrifyingly logical, bending the will of adults around them. Filmed in crisp black and white, the movie uses shadows and silence as weapons, creating a constant sense of unease. Director Wolf Rilla adapted John Wyndham's novel, The Midwich Cuckoos, wringing every ounce of tension from the concept. This wasn't just a monster movie. It was a warning about conformity, suspicion, and what happens when you're suddenly the outsider in your own home. The film inspired decades of evil children's stories, from The Omen to Stranger Things. The glowing eyes effect still sends chills up spines. Village of the Damned didn't just influence sci-fi, it set the gold standard for small-town paranoia, teaching us that sometimes the most terrifying invaders are already in the nursery. The Last Man on Earth, 1964. Before zombies were running, moaning, or breaking box office records, The Last Man on Earth imagined what it would really feel like to be utterly, terrifyingly alone. Vincent Price stars as Dr. Robert Morgan, a scientist wandering the desolate ruins of civilization, staking vampires by day and barricading himself by night. Based on Richard Matheson's novel, I Am Legend, the film strips apocalypse down to the bone. No flashy effects, no superhuman heroes, just one man, his memories, and the creeping dread of what's outside his boarded-up door. Shot in stark black and white among the abandoned streets of Rome, the film turns empty cityscapes into scenes of relentless tension. Price's performance is haunting, balancing despair, stubborn hope, and the heartbreaking routine of survival. The production was fraught with creative clashes, but its influence outpaced any behind-the-scenes drama. George Romero openly credited The Last Man on Earth as a blueprint for Night of the Living Dead, meaning the modern zombie genre owes it everything. Even now, its vision of isolation and the struggle to hold on to your humanity feels eerily modern. The Last Man on Earth isn't just a genre milestone, it's a raw, unfiltered look at what happens when the world ends and the monsters are waiting right outside your door. Fahrenheit 451, 1966. Books on Fire, Ideas Under Siege. Fahrenheit 451 is a warning shot from the future that still smolders today. Directed by French auteur François Truffaut in his only English-language film, it adapts Ray Bradbury's legendary novel about a world where firemen burn books instead of saving lives. Oscar Werner plays Montag, a fireman who begins to question the system after meeting the rebellious Clarice, played by Julie Christie. In a daring casting twist, Christie plays both Clarice and Montag's wife, symbolizing the battle inside his own mind. The visuals are quietly revolutionary. There are no printed credits. All information is spoken aloud, pulling viewers into a society where reading is forbidden. Bernard Herrmann's lush, string-only score ratchets up the tension. The stark, modernist sets and props look like something out of a pop art dream, making the future feel both familiar and deeply unsettling. Beyond its style, Fahrenheit 451 gave birth to the book people, resistance fighters who memorize entire books to keep knowledge alive. The real-life People's Library movement directly credits the film and novel as inspiration. Truffaut and Bradbury's vision still echoes in every dystopian drama that followed. In a world where information is always at risk, Fahrenheit 451 remains a fiery call to never take the right to think for granted. The 10 Victim, 1965. Who needs the Hunger Games when you have the 10th Victim? This ultra-stylish European co-production arrived in the mid-60s and practically invented the death as entertainment genre long before reality TV was a twinkle in anyone's eye. Ursula Andress and Marcello Mastroianni star as lethal contestants in The Big Hunt, a televised contest where being the hunter or the hunted can make you a superstar. The rules are simple: survive 10 rounds, kill or be killed, and you get fame, fortune, and a future. The film is a visual riot, swinging Rome locations, pop art interiors, and costumes that would make any fashionista jealous. Its satirical bite is razor sharp. There are weaponized bras, booby-trapped mansions, and media-savvy agents who make the violence as stylish as a catwalk strut. Director Elio Petri skewers everything from celebrity culture to consumerism with a wink and a sneer. Critics didn't get it at first, but later generations recognized the 10th victim as a vision of entertainment gone mad. From Battle Royale to Black Mirror, its fingerprints are all over our obsession with spectacle and surveillance. It's a wild ride that saw our future coming and made sure it looked fabulous. First Men in the Moon, 1964. Before Neil Armstrong even set foot on lunar dust, First Men in the Moon rocketed Victorian explorers straight to our nearest neighbor in space. This British gem, based on H.G. Wells' novel, opens with a wild hook. Apollo astronauts land on the moon, only to find a British flag already there, left behind by a 19th century crew. Flashback to an eccentric inventor, his anti-gravity paint called Cavorite, and a brass spaceship that looks like something out of a steampunk fever dream. But here's what sets it apart. Legendary effects wizard Ray Harryhausen animates an army of bizarre, caterpillar-like moon creatures that make the lunar caverns both magical and menacing. Every stop-motion frame oozes personality, setting a new bar for practical effects. Critics at the time wrote it off as kids' stuff, but the film's DNA is everywhere. James Cameron has said the bioluminescent lunar landscape inspired Avatar's Pandora, and The First Contact beats Echo through generations of sci-fi. With its mix of British wit, practical magic, and sheer storytelling audacity, First Men in the Moon doesn't just visit the moon, it plants its flag in the history of cinematic innovation. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, 1961. Take a dash of Cold War paranoia, a visionary submarine, and a world teetering on the edge of disaster, and you've got Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. This Irwin Allen production didn't just make underwater adventure cool, it made it urgent. Walter Pidgeon leads the cast as Admiral Nelson, who must save the world from an overheated atmosphere caused by a mysterious belt of radiation circling the globe. What's the solution? Take the Seaview, the world's most advanced nuclear sub, on a breakneck mission under the polar ice to fire a missile and save humanity. No pressure. The film is pure spectacle, with miniatures and underwater photography that set a new standard for effects-driven blockbusters. It was such a hit, it spawned a wildly popular TV series and inspired a wave of sci-fi actioners centered on technology, teamwork, and scientific daring. But here's the real kicker. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea captured the era's existential anxieties and made audiences believe that the future, good or bad, was up for grabs. As long as someone was brave enough to dive in headfirst, underwater sci-fi would never be the same. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. Let's get moody. Planet of the Vampires is a fever dream blend of style, suspense, and pure nightmare energy that influenced everyone from Ridley Scott to John Carpenter. The story kicks off with two spaceships landing on a fog-shrouded planet after picking up a distress signal, only to find themselves stalked by something far worse than vampires, an ancient alien force that possesses and turns the crew against each other. Italian director Mario Bava worked with an international cast and a shoestring budget, but the visuals, neon-lit landscapes, sculptural fog, and those unforgettable high-collared leather spacesuits that still look futuristic. This is the missing link between Forbidden Planet and Alien. Yes, Ridley Scott openly credited Bava's derelict ship and skeleton-strewn planet as inspiration for his own masterpiece. The horror movie pacing, the pulpy sense of doom, and the inventiveness with lighting and effects set Planet of the Vampires apart from every other space yarn of its era. Critics didn't get it at first, but the movie's influence is now the stuff of legend. It's proof that sometimes all you need is atmosphere, nerve, and a willingness to get weird, and sci-fi cinema will never be the same. The Dam, 1963. Looking for a science fiction film that blends Cold War anxiety, government paranoia, and sheer creepiness? The Damned is your under-the-radar British masterpiece. Set in a sun-soaked English coastal town, it starts off like a juvenile delinquent biker flick and then shifts gears into chilling territory when a couple stumbles upon a secret government facility. Inside, a group of radioactive children raised in total isolation, bred to survive a nuclear future the outside world fears is inevitable. Director Joseph Losey's film is part social commentary, part sci-fi horror, part existential mood piece. The English seaside becomes a battleground for innocence and institutional control. The performances are raw, the black and white photography is stark, and the tension ratchets up scene by scene. Though it was delayed and edited by the studio, The Damned gained a reputation for its willingness to confront taboo topics: nuclear fallout, lost childhood, and society's willingness to sacrifice the few for the many. If you thought the British only did polite sci-fi, The Damned will shake you. It's a deeply unsettling, genre-blending classic that predicted a lot of future dystopian stories, while never losing its emotional punch. So, which of these mind-bending 60s sci-fi classics blew your expectations to pieces, or made you rethink what movies can do? Drop your favorite in the comments, and let's see which film truly changed the future of cinema for you. Did we miss your personal game changer? Hit subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that rewired Hollywood's imagination. One thing's for sure, the 60s didn't just predict the future, they gave it a brand new look.